We're talking about animals, and we're still talking about protostomes. Uh, we've completed the mollusks, including my favorites, the octopus, and now we're going to talk about some more worms. These worms are called annelids. They're called annelids because they've got segments. They're made up of segments, and those segments allow them to be actually quite a bit larger and quite a bit more complicated than the platyhelminthes or the nematoda that we learned about last week in lab. So annelids. Let's see. The annelids are segmented worms. That makes it sound simple, but this segmentation has allowed for a lot more complexity in the bodies of these worms, and they're a lot larger. If you were in the lab, if we were still meeting in real life, and you looked at the nematodes that we usually keep in vinegar, you could just barely see that there was something in there and that it was squirming around. That's about how big a nematode gets. Whereas an earthworm is a big thing, right? Ooh, here is an Australian earthworm. They get really big in Australia. So a lot more complicated. Now, in order to get a lot bigger, they can no longer just rely on diffusion to get oxygen from out here to inside all of their cells. So they have got a vascular system. I'm sorry, I better change the color of that font, but that says a vascular system. A vascular system. A vascular system means blood vessels, kind of like arteries and veins, and a heart. As a matter of fact, earthworms have got more than one heart. They've got a main heart, and then they've got some accessory hearts. So very cool for them. The earthworm also has a little tiny brain. Don't know what they think about. Maybe they think about where's the next good place to eat more dirt. What do earthworms eat? Do they really eat earth? Well, technically, they do eat earth, but what do they get their nutrition from? Well, the mineral components of the soil, that doesn't have any nutrition for an earthworm. But all of that soil goes through their entire digestive tract, in through their mouth, all the way down through their complete digestive tract. And what they get nutrition from is all of the decomposing plant material and all of the bacteria and fungus that is thriving by eating the decomposing plant material. Now, if you were in lab, you also would have a chance to pick up some earthworms. Earthworms are very, very, very good for gardens. It's a gardener's rule of thumb that the more earthworms you have, the healthier your garden is. And if you did pick them up, you would feel that they have got these little bristles on each one of the segments of their body, and that allows them to get traction so that they can push themselves through the soil. Earthworms can move more complicated than nematodes. Our nematodes, if you looked at them through the microscope, they just go like this. They just thrash about. But an earthworm's got really complicated motion. They can get shorter and kind of fat, and then they can stretch out and get kind of thin, and they don't have to curve their whole body at the same time, and that's because they've got these different segments, and now wrapped around the different segments are also muscles. So more complicated musculature, more complicated nervous system, little tiny brain, segments have bristles, vascular system. Oh, and they also have a true coelom. So if you wanted to, I guess you could do surgery on an earthworm. You could open him up, do something and sew him back shut again. Little tiny stitches. Yeah, earthworms do eat their way through the soil, and they make the soil healthier. They add more air into the soil, which improves the quality of the bacteria and fungus that are decontaminating substances in the soil and releasing the nutrients to the plants that are living in the soil. Now, earthworms are not the only ones of the annelids. There also are worms that are called polyketes. Now, polyketes, we've got two different kinds of polyketes here. One type of polykete are tube worms, and tube worms can burrow into the seafloor with just their little gills sticking out, and then if a fish comes around and is like, oh, what is that? They pull themselves back in. Some tube worms are called feather dusters. You may have heard of feather dusters because it kind of looks like never mind. These tube worms that live that way, they are filter feeder. Technically, these are their gills. So technically, originally, those were designed to allow them to harvest oxygen from the water column around them, but it also allows them to filter feed and grab any nutrition, little algae and paramecium and stuff like that are in the water. But there are other kinds of polyketes that are predators. And polyketes like this one might remind you of a centipede. Now, they are not centipedes, okay? This kind of a polykete is not a centipede for a couple of reasons. Centipedes live on land, not in the water. That's one thing. But also, even though this looks like a centipede, centipedes actually have legs. And these things that are sticking out, those are not technically legs. They are actually highly modified bristles. And like the bristles on an earthworm, these highly modified little fin-like bristles do allow this polykete to get additional traction on the floor of the ocean. So he's using them like legs, but they're not legs yet. Right? Oh, and then we have the ickiest of the annelids, which are the leeches. Ready, set, here it is. Okay. Yeah, these are leeches. Leeches are hermaphrodites, and leeches are classified as carnivores. You know, in some ways, their nutrition can be considered parasitic, but their lifestyle is not considered parasitic because they don't live in you the whole time. They jump onto an organism, suck some blood, and then hop back off. So leeches. Now, leeches, it may surprise you, are used in medicine. Now, I'm not talking about back in the day when it's like, send for the leeches, and it's not like that. But actually, if anyone's like loses a finger in some kind of like a woodworking accident or something like that, and they go to sew it back on, you need leeches to make that repair work. So in modern surgical medicine, leeches are necessary for reconstructive surgeries. And if you would like to watch a video about that, I've got a video about that right here. All righty? I think that's it. Yes, that's it. The next video is about the arthropods.